The street was silent, bathed in the golden glow of late afternoon. A single taxi slowed to a halt, its tires crunching against the gravel. The driver gave a polite nod before pulling away, leaving Michael standing alone on the cracked sidewalk outside the house he had dreamed of every night for nearly 2 years. His heart thudded in his chest, not from the exhaustion of the long flight home or the weight of the worn military duffel bag slung over his shoulder, but from something deeper, something almost primal. Fear. Hope. Longing. All tangled into one. The porch steps creaked under his boots. The key Emma had mailed him, along with dozens of letters filled with love and promises of the future, felt oddly cold in his hand. His fingers trembled as he slid the key into the lock. The door gave way with a soft groan, the scent of lavender drifted toward him, her favorite. But there was something else too. Something unfamiliar. He stepped inside. The living room was pristine, almost staged. 2 wine glasses sat on the coffee table. His brow furrowed. His pulse quickened. He set the duffel down slowly, his instincts, honed through endless nights in hostile territory, whispering that something was wrong. A man's coat lay casually over the back of the chair. Black leather. Too large for Emma. Emma, he called, voice hoarse. No answer. The air felt thick, suffocating. He climbed the stairs, each step echoing in the silence. At the top, the bedroom door was slightly ajar. Voices, 2 of them, soft, intimate. A man's laugh. Emma's familiar giggle. Michael's breath caught. He didn't push the door. He didn't need to. His mind painted the picture more vividly than any sight could. He stumbled back down the stairs, hands shaking uncontrollably. His knees buckled as he collapsed onto the living room couch. The battlefield had taken many things from him, brothers in arms, time, peace, but this. This was the wound that finally broke him. The front door opened hours later. Keys jingling. The soft click of heels on hardwood. Michael? Emma's voice was a strangled whisper when she saw him. Her hands flew to her mouth. Tears welled instantly. Oh my God. Michael. You're alive. She dropped everything, rushing toward him, but he stood, frozen. They told me. They told me you were gone, she sobbed. I had a funeral. I mourned you. He raised a hand, stopping her in place. I came home, he murmured. To this. To you and him. Her face crumpled. She dropped to her knees, her body racked with sobs. I didn't know how to live without you, she choked. I was broken. I met Jason 6 months after the telegram. I swear to you. I thought you were gone forever. How long? Michael's voice was a jagged whisper. 3 months, she said, barely audible. It started 3 months ago. I never stopped loving you. I don't even know how it happened. His heart splintered. He wanted to scream, to break something, but all he could do was nod numbly. He picked up his bag and walked out into the night. The door clicked softly behind him. The motel room was sterile and cold. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his reflection in the cracked mirror. The face that stared back was gaunt, hollow-eyed, not just from war but from the loss that now consumed him. The next morning, Michael knew he couldn't sit idle. He couldn't let the nightmare swallow him whole. He reached out to the only person he trusted, Olivia Klein. Former military intelligence. Sharp. Loyal. Deadly when necessary. They met at a nondescript cafe on the outskirts of town. Olivia's eyes widened when she saw him. Michael, she breathed. We thought you were. I need help, he cut in, voice flat. Something's wrong. I came home and nothing fits. My wife. The man she's with. It's not just a love affair. I feel it in my bones, she nodded without hesitation. Give me everything. Names. Dates. Details. For the next 2 hours, Michael poured out the entire story, his faked death notification. Emma's relationship with Jason Calloway, and the eerie feeling that none of it was coincidence. I'll look into him, Olivia promised. Days passed. Michael barely slept. Memories of gunfire and desert winds tangled with the surreal horror of betrayal. Olivia returned with her findings, grim-faced. Jason Calloway, she began, sliding a folder across the table. Dishonorably discharged. Fraud convictions. Allegations of manipulation, coercion. And get this, he's connected to a private security firm known for forging military documents. Michael's fists clenched. He faked my death, Olivia nodded. I believe so. He targeted Emma. He targeted your identity, your life. And he's been draining your accounts. Preparing to assume everything you built, Michael's heart pounded. The rage was cold now, focused. We bring him down. All of it, Olivia smiled thinly. We will. The plan had to be flawless. Michael and Olivia spent sleepless nights crafting every detail, legal, digital, psychological. They mapped out scenarios on whiteboards, pored over files, and practiced every line, every step, until there was no room for error. Hidden cameras were installed in lamps, clocks, and air vents. Olivia, a former cybercrime investigator, traced the fraudulent documents back to Jason's private network, uncovering offshore accounts, shell companies, and false identities. Every movement, every whisper needed to be captured. Michael couldn't sleep. Night after night, he sat alone with old photographs, his wedding day, his deployment farewell, images of a life that now felt like a cruel joke. He scribbled notes, revisited memories, analyzing everything Jason ever said or did in search of missed warning signs. His hands shook as he traced the faces in the photos. How did I not see this? He whispered to no one. Emma, guilt-ridden but resolute, agreed to help. Her eyes were hollow, voice quiet but firm. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, she whispered, tears clinging to her lashes, but I have to do this. I need to make this right. In the days leading up to the confrontation, Michael tailed Jason secretly, documenting his movements. He followed him to a luxury car dealership, a high-end jeweler, and a real estate office, each visit evidence of Jason's plans to disappear into a new life funded by stolen money. Michael captured photos, recorded conversations from afar, compiling a damning dossier. Each new discovery felt like a knife twisting deeper. The evening of the trap finally arrived. Emma, playing her part with heartbreaking authenticity, invited Jason for dinner, her voice quivering with false hope. Jason, suave and oblivious, arrived with expensive wine and that same charming, snake-like smile. He spoke of the future, us. Together. A fresh start. His hands grazed Emma's as he spun his web of lies, utterly unaware that the walls were closing in. Hidden in a surveillance van down the street, Michael and Olivia listened intently through earpieces. Olivia monitored the camera feeds while Michael, breath sharp and eyes blazing, clutched a worn photograph of him and Emma. Jason's voice floated through the speakers, the money's nearly cleared. Soon, we'll be set. No more hiding. Michael's blood boiled. His jaw clenched. Images of battlefield survival flashed through his mind, bullets, smoke, loss, and yet this betrayal cut deeper. He steadied his breath. The moment was here. Michael stepped out of the van, heart hammering. adrenaline surging. Each footstep toward the house felt heavy, loaded with rage and heartbreak. He pushed the door open with deliberate calm. The air inside was thick with tension. Emma sat stiffly. Jason turned, wineglass in hand, his face draining of color. "Michael." Jason stammered. You're supposed to be dead." Michael's voice was cold steel, sharp and unyielding. "Funny. That's what they told me too." Jason's eyes darted to Emma, then to the door. Panic set in. Before he could move, federal agents burst through every entrance, guns drawn. Jason froze. The glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. His knees buckled. He dropped, hands raised, breath ragged, his smug grin, finally, irrevocably, shattered. The trial was swift and brutal. Jason Calloway faced multiple charges: fraud, identity theft, attempted murder, conspiracy. His calm mask cracked under cross-examination. The court heard everything: how he orchestrated Michael's false death, manipulated Emma, siphoned funds, and planned to vanish with a new identity. Emma testified tearfully. "I was blind," she admitted. "I wanted to believe he cared. But he was a predator." Michael sat silent through most of the trial, stoic but haunted. Memories of the battlefield seemed easier than this, a betrayal so personal it stripped him to the bone. The jury returned a guilty verdict. Jason was sentenced to 20 years without parole. As he was led away, he turned to Michael, venom in his eyes. "You should have stayed dead." Michael didn't flinch. He simply said, "I came back for the truth. And I got it." The months that followed were quiet, but healing was far from easy. Michael and Emma began intensive counseling. The trust between them had been shattered, yet both refused to let it be the end of their story. They shared long, painful conversations, sometimes shouting, sometimes crying, sometimes just sitting in silence. Michael battled nightmares, flashes of combat chaos intertwined with images of betrayal. Emma, too, wrestled with guilt that gnawed at her even in sleep. One autumn morning, while walking along the old lake trail, Michael paused. The air smelled of pine and distant rain. "I don't know if we can go back," he admitted softly. Emma's hand trembled in his. "Maybe not," she whispered. "But maybe we can go forward." And so, step by step, they did. Michael poured his restless energy into creating the Homecoming Project, a sanctuary for veterans not only returning from the battlefield but also grappling with the emotional wars waged within. The vision was born over countless sleepless nights, a place where no veteran would feel alone in their struggle. Emma helped him refine the idea. They sketched out plans, met with therapists, lawyers, and fellow veterans. Securing funding was a mountain in itself. They faced rejection after rejection. Nonprofits turned them down, politicians offered polite disinterest. There were days Michael nearly gave up. Overwhelmed by bureaucracy, skepticism, and the sheer weight of his own trauma. One night, after yet another disappointing funding call, Michael sat slumped at the kitchen table, head in his hands. "Maybe this is pointless," he muttered. "Maybe nobody cares." Emma knelt beside him, taking his hands. "I care. And they will too. You're building something that matters. You saved lives before, you're saving them now." Those words kept him going. Finally, a breakthrough came. A veteran-owned business offered seed money. A local therapist volunteered her time. Piece by piece, the Homecoming Project came to life. On the day of the grand opening, the small center was filled with veterans, families, and supporters. Michael stood at the podium, Emma by his side, his hands only slightly shaking. He looked out over the crowd, his heart pounding with something close to hope. "Coming home isn't just about geography," he began, voice steady. It's about finding your way back to yourself, even when everything you knew is gone. It's about reminding each other that we're not broken beyond repair. Applause filled the air. Faces smiled through tears, and so, the first steps toward healing had truly begun. Years passed, Michael's project, the Homecoming Project, became more than just an organization, it became a movement. What started as a modest initiative grew into a nationwide network of support for veterans grappling not only with the scars of war but with the betrayals, heartbreaks, and disillusionments that too often accompanied their return. Each face that came through the doors carried its own story. There was Sergeant Daniel Ruiz, who had survived 3 tours but returned to find his family gone and his home foreclosed. Through the foundation, he found legal aid, a new job, and slowly, a sense of self-worth. There was Corporal Lila Nguyen, who struggled silently with PTSD until the project connected her with trauma counseling and peer support. She later became one of its strongest advocates, speaking to new veterans about hope. One letter Michael kept framed on his office wall came from a former Navy medic named Teresa. It read, "Your foundation saved my life. I had lost everything, my family, my purpose, my will to go on. Walking through those doors, I found not just help but a reason to keep fighting." Thank you. Emma and Michael didn't erase the past, they carried it with them, like scars that told the story of who they had become. But they found peace in purpose. On quiet evenings, they sat on the porch, fingers intertwined, sharing the stillness, watching the stars. Michael's final reflection came on the 10th anniversary of the Homecoming Project. The crowd had grown, veterans, families, public figures, and countless lives touched by the work. His voice was steady, clear, and deeply human. The worst battles are the ones fought in the quiet. In the mind. In the heart. We've learned that sometimes the enemy isn't out there, it's within. But no matter how many times we fall, we rise. We rebuild. We reach for each other. Because the truth, like water, finds its way through any barrier. The applause that followed wasn't just polite, it was thunderous, full of gratitude, full of shared stories and silent resilience. As the sun set, the camera panned out. The skyline glowed in golden hues. A montage of faces appeared, Daniel, Lila, Teresa, and dozens of others, each living proof that healing was possible. The future stretched open before them. Fade to black, end credits.